ਇੰਡੀਅਨ ਸਕੂਲ ਆਫ ਬਿਜ਼ਨਸ ਵਿੱਚ ਭਾਰਤ ਆਸਟ੍ਰੇਲੀਆ 2 ਰੋਜ਼ਾ ਪੈਨਲ ਡਿਸਕਸ਼ਨ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਕਰਵਾਇਆ ਗਿਆ, ਜਿਸ ਵਿੱਚ ਦੋਵਾਂ ਮੁਲਕਾਂ ਦੇ ਮੰਨੇ ਪ੍ਰਮੰਨੇ ਰਾਜਸੀ ਆਗੂਆਂ ਤੋਂ ਪੈਨਲਿਸਟ ਨੇ ਹਿੱਸਾ ਲਿਆ। ਇਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਵਿੱਚ ਮੈਲਬਨ ਤੋਂ ਮੈਂਬਰ ਪਾਰਲੀਮੈਂਟ ਟਿਮ ਵਾਟਸ ਨੇ ਬਹੁਤ ਹੁਮ-ਹੁਮਾ ਕੇ ਆਪਣਾ ਹਿੱਸਾ ਪਾਇਆ ਤੇ ਬਹੁਤ ਹੀ ਵਧੀਆ ਤਰੀਕੇ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਸਾਡੇ ਪੰਜਾਬੀਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਵਿਦੇਸ਼ਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਵਸੇ ਨੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਬਾਰੇ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕੀਤੀ। ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਕਿਹਾ ਕਿ ਵਿਦੇਸ਼ਾਂ ਵਿੱਚ ਪੰਜਾਬੀਆਂ ਨੇ ਆਪਣੀ ਕਾਬਲੀਅਤ ਦਾ ਲੋਹਾ ਮਨਵਾਇਆ ਹੈ ਔਰ ਪੰਜਾਬੀਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਇੱਕ ਰਿਲੈਕਸੇਸ਼ਨ ਮਿਲਣੀ ਚਾਹੀਦੀ ਹੈ ਵੀਜ਼ਾ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ। ਸੋ ਜਿਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਪਰਟੀਕੁਲਰਲੀ ਗੱਲ ਕੀਤੀ ਹੈ 2 ਵੱਡੇ ਸੈਕਟਰਸ ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਬਹੁਤ ਸਾਰੇ ਭਾਰਤੀ ਵਿਦਿਆਰਥੀ ਇੱਥੇ ਪੜ੍ਹਨ ਆਉਂਦੇ ਹਨ, ਇਨਫੋਰਮੇਸ਼ਨ ਟੈਕਨੋਲੋਜੀ ਤੇ ਹੈਲਥ। ਤੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਹੁਣ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਲੈ ਚੱਲਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਮਿਸਟਰ ਟਿਮ ਵਾਟਸ ਦੇ ਕੋਲ, ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਅਸੀਂ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ ਇੱਕ ਛੋਟੀ ਜਿਹੀ ਇੰਟਰਵਿਊ ਜਿਹਦੇ 'ਚ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਜਾਣੋਗੇ ਕਿ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਭਾਰਤ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਹਾਲ ਹੀ ਵਿੱਚ ਕਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਦਾ ਆਪਣਾ ਸਾਡਾ ਪੰਜਾਬੀਆਂ ਦਾ ਮਾਣ ਵਧਾਇਆ ਹੈ ਤੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਕਈ ਵਾਅਦੇ ਕੀਤੇ ਹਨ। ਮਿਸਟਰ ਟਿਮ ਵਾਟਸ, ਵੈਲਕਮ ਟੂ ਰੇਡੀਓ ਹਾਂਜੀ ਮੈਲਬਨ।
It's great to join you.
Thank you. Thank you for your precious time. Mr. Tim Watts, I have a question. The first question that I would like to ask you is, if we talk about Mr. Tim Watts, we have so many adjectives to talk. You work for so many sectors for our community and for the other communities from Southeast Asia, like you work in domestic violence, cultural integration, multiculturalism. Would you like to tell us that what inspires you to work for these communities?
So my grandfather was really my inspiration for getting involved in politics, and he always said to all of the children in our family that he didn't mind what we did with our lives, so long as what we were doing with our lives was serving a cause that was bigger than ourselves. So from that, my sister became a nurse, and my brother is a coach, and I went into politics because I had a skill set that allowed me to make an impact there. So since I was elected in 2013, I've tried to represent the issues that are important to my community. And my community in Melbourne's West, from Footscray through to Sunshine, Altona Meadows through to Williamstown, are the issues you've talked about. We're an extremely diverse electorate. Around 2/3 of my constituents are either born overseas or their parents are born overseas.
Okay.
So it really matters to them that we live in an Australia that is socially harmonious, where new Australians are treated fairly and equally and have just as much of a shot as people who have been here for 6 generations, like my own family has been. On the family violence front, that's really an issue that affects every electorate in Australia. But shortly after I was elected, there was a particularly horrible crime that occurred in Sunshine, and that brought my attention to the issue. And since then, I've been working with groups across the community to try and put an end to this really horrific blight on our society.
We are very indebted to have you with us today, Mr. Tim, because the kind of politician that you have been being represented, the communities, as you said, that the constituency that you represent is Gellibrand, where most of the people are born overseas, right? So I have a question, like you have a bachelor's degree in law, and then Masters in Public Policy and Management, then Masters of Science in Politics and Communication from London School of Economics. So what motivated you to have law and then a combination of public policy and management, and then you became an Australian politician? So do you think that the study that you have done, you are able to justify that in the position that you are holding in the Parliament?
Yes, I think so. I've been lucky enough to obtain a number of university degrees, probably too many, some would say. But the reason that I obtained those degrees is because I did my law degree very quickly. I finished it in about 2.5 years and started practicing as a corporate lawyer in one of the biggest law firms in Australia when I was 20 years old.
Wow.
But I felt at that time that my education wasn't broad enough, that I'd rushed through my law degree, and I knew the law very well, but I didn't know much about anything else. And that's why at night, while I was a lawyer, I did a Masters of Public Policy, and then subsequently years later went to London School of Economics for another master's. In the modern world we're in now, we're really in a world of lifetime learning. So hopefully my studying time is not over. Certainly I feel that as a Member of Parliament, every year feels like a new university degree. You process so much information, you come across so many issues. It's an incredibly challenging job.
Yes, it is. As I have seen in your profile, your things, that you have been writing a blog as well since 2006. Can you please tell our listeners what that blog is about?
Yes, it's funny. This is one that people seem to know me for. It's a bit of a personal hobby of mine. As I said earlier, because I did my university studies so quickly, I was very focused on a narrow set of issues, and I realised at one point that I hadn't done the broader reading and thinking about the world that I wanted to do. So I resolved to treat it a little bit like personal fitness or like exercise, and I set myself the target that I'd read a book every week, and that I'd post it on a blog to track my progress and keep myself honest. So I've been doing that for some years now, and it's a good discipline to make sure that I'm prioritising what's important, the things that I value in my life with my time, and certainly reading broadly and widely is something that I think makes me a better Member of Parliament.
Yes.
Helps me to empathise with others and understand the experiences of others, as well as deepening and broadening my knowledge of non-fiction issues.
All right. So this is really very wonderful for all of us to know that the parliamentarian who is with us today is a lover of books, and he has been sharing his experiences in a blog as well. And he's got so many degrees, and still he's not satisfied by his education. Wow, we are going to have another. You are going to do PhD degree, right, Mr. Tim? Now.
I think if I did that, my wife may object. She thinks that I've got enough on my plate as it is without taking on a PhD as well.
Overqualified being. This happens, yes. Jokes apart, Mr. Tim, I have a question related to the dialogue that you represented, Australia and India. Evidently bowled over by entrepreneurial qualities and never say die spirit of Punjabis. You have given really, really nice statements in the newspapers as well in Punjab. But you talked about relaxation in visa for Indian students. So what is that about? Can you please briefly elaborate that?
Sure. So as you're saying, I was recently in India for the Australia-India Youth Dialogue, which is a dialogue that's trying to build a greater understanding between Australia and India, and greater personal connections between young Australians and young Indians. So I was one of 15 Australians who spent about a week with 15 young Indians in India, and we were lucky enough to spend a good period of time in Punjab, in Mohali and Chandigarh, which was a thrill for me because so many of my constituents come from that area. So I'd heard a lot about it, but I hadn't got to see it myself. So I was, as politicians do, I was talking to the local press when I was there, and one of the things that they were asking me about was the process of Indians coming to Australia to study. And I told them that I thought that was a very good thing, and that now in Australia we have somewhere over 500,000 Indian Australians in Australia, and that's grown from around only 140,000 less than 10 years ago. So it's been a very rapid growth in the size of the community. And what I expressed to the journalists there was that I thought this was a very positive thing. I'd seen the impact that the Indian Australian community has had on the commerce, on the culture, on the charitable sectors in my own community, and knew that the impact was very big. So I'd expressed to the journalists that I thought that I wanted to see more Indians coming to Australia. So that's where that came from.
Yes. Thank you so much for elaborating this, Mr. Tim. I have another question. This is going to be a question that our listeners would be very much interested to know from such a brilliant and intellectual like you. So the question is that we have been witnessing from the past 1 year approximately that the visa conditions for accounting and IT students that have been a little bit constrained. with EUI, like the files are not being opened for several months, and they have to go back on student visas, and the point system has been raised from 60 to 65, 70. So in the midst of these circumstances, we feel a little bit puzzled that how would the relaxation in visa would come up, and what would be the policies that the government is going to apply?
Yeah, it's fair to say, I think, that the scale of growth in particularly Indians, but many other nationalities in coming to study in Australia is something that has, in some respects, caught policymakers on the hop. That the system that has been developed to deal with temporary migrants to Australia, and that's people who could be coming here to study. They could be coming here on a working holiday visa. They could be coming here on a skilled migrant visa or a 457 visa. The scale of the growth in this temporary migration, which makes up the majority of people coming to Australia now, is something that's caught policymakers, well, maybe not unawares, but they haven't planned a holistic system to deal with that. One of the things I'm interested in exploring more as an MP and doing more work on is thinking through properly the full implications of this new pattern of migration into Australia, because the reality that we see is that the typical journey for an Australian migrant now is not that they come to Australia with the idea of permanent settlement on the table from the very start. More likely, they come to Australia on a temporary visa of some kind, live in Australia for a number of years before obtaining permanent residency, and then become citizens down the track. Now, my view is that some of the issues you discussed there are really symbolic of the fact that we haven't got that process down very smoothly yet. We haven't thought through the full implications of this new migration system. So, and that's just one area where I think there are issues. I don't think we're thinking through settlement services for people here on temporary visas.
Yes.
I don't think we're thinking through the way that we do multicultural policy in Australia, which really to date has relied on citizenship as being the lodestone of how we deal with multicultural policy. So I think there are many issues that need to be unpicked in this space, and I'm keen to tackle them as a MP that represents a lot of these people.
Yes, Mr. Tim, thank you so much for elaborating that, and we are very hopeful and optimistic about this, that if a minister of your caliber is talking about this, and very soon we would be witnessing all these things in the times to come. I have a question, one more question, Mr. Tim. I know your time is very precious. One question is that you have talked about that people wish to settle in Australia and they should be retained there as an effective workforce. So is there any new program that is coming up in which we are getting the people on the jobs and then training them to go into the Australian job sector or the corporate sector where they can work nicely and they can settle down in Australia?
I'm not aware of that, but I'm an opposition MP, obviously, so the government may be working on things that I'm not privy to. I think, as I said, that all members of Parliament need to be paying more attention to these issues, take them more seriously. Certainly that was a big part of my motivation for being a part of the Australia-India Youth Dialogue, because we've seen from the Indian government in particular a greater focus on the welfare of non-resident Indians. And that's something that I think that we should be learning from in Australia, and taking on board as well. So I think all MPs need to be paying more attention to the experiences of people who come to Australia as temporary migrants, because odds are, years down the track, they're going to be Australian citizens and a full part of our electoral community.
Yes, we are quite hopeful, Mr. Tim, although you are in the opposition right now, but definitely the policies are going to be implemented if you have this vision and mission in your mind. Apart from this, we have one query. Our listeners would be very interested to know about how was your visit to India, and how did you like India? What was the most important thing that fascinated you?
Well, it was a real thrill. I mean, like many Australians, I'd done the tourist trips to India before, so I'd backpacked around India and I'd seen the tourist highlights as a holidayer before, but I hadn't been to India in a professional context where I could work with and learn from my peers in other in politics, but also in business and culture and the arts. So the people were a real thrill. The other thing that I suppose, well, surprise is not quite the right word, but I found the most impressive was the Indian School of Business in Mohali was an extremely impressive campus. I was aware of its international rankings in terms of the International Business School rankings, and that was very impressive. But to see the campus firsthand, that had a really significant impact on me. It's certainly something that I've said to people when I came back to Australia how impressive that campus is. It's also a good lesson for Australia that we can't rest on our laurels about the quality of our own higher education institutions. We need to continue to invest in our universities and our higher education places of higher learning, because countries like India, countries like China, who previously have sent many people to Australia for education, and I hope will continue to do so in the future, are also improving their home higher education institutions. So
yes,
that certainly had a big impact on me seeing that firsthand.
Yes, and Mr. Tim, that was my next question actually, which you answered about Indian School of Business, and I'm very feeling very nice and elevated to know it from an Australian that he liked something in India, and that too in Punjab. Our Punjabi listeners would be very happy to know about this. Yes, Indian School of Business is at a very, very higher level, and they have really created an infrastructure that is very parallel to the Western countries' universities and campuses. So, Mr. Tim, this is very different question from the interview. I'm taking it on the lighter side. Did you enjoy Punjabi food over there in Chandigarh and Mohali?
I do. I did. I'm lucky that in my electorate, in West Footscray in particular, we have the best of India in Melbourne's West. So I have a palate that is very comfortable with Indian food. I enjoy it a great deal. So that wasn't a difficult thing for me to adjust to. The only disappointment of the trip was that because it was a professional trip, a business trip, I didn't have any control over my itinerary, and I must be the first person to go to Punjab and not head up to Amritsar. So that is a very good reason for me to come back in the future, I think. A very good excuse.
Yes, we would be welcoming you over there because we've got a lot of people over there in Amritsar who would be wanting you to be there. Amritsar, I belong to Amritsar, Mr. Tim Watts, and I'm quite happy to know that you really yearn to go there.
It is, as I say, it's my secret excuse to be able to get back. I'm looking forward to it in the future. I know that Michelle Rowland, a colleague of mine from Sydney, a member of Parliament in Sydney's West, has made the trip, and she showed me her pictures and she raves about it, and I have to meet that objective myself. So
what in Amritsar is inspiring you to go and visit there? Which particular monument or food or something else?
Sorry, I didn't catch that.
My question was that in Amritsar, what thing is attracting you more? You saw in the pictures. Is it a historical monument, a temple, food, people, culture?
Oh, certainly the temple, the Golden Temple is something that is internationally renowned. I think most people, it's what they dream of going to visit. So, yes, as I say, it was a source of great frustration to me that I went all that way
and
wasn't able to see the jewel in the crown, so to speak.
Yes, definitely. And Mr. Tim Watts, it was really very nice talking to you. I know you have given your precious time to us, and we are really honored that we could have some time talking to you about your professional trip, about your personal life, your qualification, your visions, your missions, and your wish to go to Amritsar. Thank you so much, Mr. Tim. It was nice talking to you.
My pleasure. Anytime.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
AC Mr. Tim Watts, ਜਿਹੜੇ ਕਿ ਹਾਲ ਵਿੱਚ ਹੀ ਭਾਰਤ ਦਾ ਦੌਰਾ ਕਰਕੇ ਆਏ ਹਨ। ਇਹਨਾਂ ਵਿੱਚ ਮੈਲਬਨ ਤੋਂ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਪਾਰਲੀਮੈਂਟ ਟਿਮ ਵਾਟਸ ਉੱਥੇ ਗਏ ਸਨ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਬਹੁਤ ਸਾਰੀਆਂ ਅੱਛੀਆਂ ਗੱਲਾਂ ਪੰਜਾਬੀਆਂ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਕੀਤੀਆਂ। ਤੇ ਇਸ ਮੌਕੇ ਮੈਲਬਨ ਤੋਂ ਆਸਟ੍ਰੇਲੀਆ ਵਿੱਚ ਲੇਬਰ ਪਾਰਟੀ ਦੇ ਸੰਸਦ ਮੈਂਬਰ ਟਿਮ ਵਾਟਸ ਨੇ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਕੀਤੀ ਇੱਕ ਛੋਟੀ ਜਿਹੀ ਇੰਟਰਵਿਊ, ਜਿਹਦੇ ਤੇ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਆਉਣ ਵਾਲੇ ਰੋਜ਼ਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਇੱਕ ਵੱਡਾ ਵਿਚਾਰ ਵਟਾਂਦਰਾ ਤੇ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਰੂਬਰੂ ਹੋਵਾਂਗੇ ਇੱਕ ਵਾਰ ਫਿਰ ਤੋਂ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਇੱਦਾਂ ਦੀ ਹੀ ਹਸਤੀ। ਤਦ ਤੱਕ ਲਈ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਦਿਓ ਵਿਦਾ, ਰੱਬ ਰਾਖਾ।